Good morning and welcome to Morning Moments. I am so glad that you came to join us today. I have a special guest she's from the same state, but she's in the western part of the states in Virginia. Jennifer Lalli, she is an author. She's involved with the Hunt for Joy. I'm sure she'll tell you about that and some other things. I met her through television. Well, I saw her on TV and I asked her to be on Morning Moments, and I saw her in Senator Club. And I am so glad that you came to join us today.
Thank you so much, Andy. I appreciate this opportunity to get to share my experience and the experience that I have had in terms of witnessing the burdens that I've been through. And I'm going to share those with you today. So let me start by saying, I know that you ask quite often, what is it that you do and what are you doing now? And how does this relate to God? One thing, you'll see that I'm in my room. So right now during these times, I think not only have some of us been pushed to work at home, work in our rooms, but part of the reason that I'm doing this interview with you today is because I do think that we are in a time right now where many of us need God more than ever, perhaps. I mean, we always need God, but I think these times are a bit more challenging. So what I want to do today is explain who I am, what I do, and what I'd like to do. So again, my name is Jen Lalli. I have a PhD in polymer chemistry. I get paid, I like to put it in layman's terms, I get paid to write science fiction. What we do is our research group comes up with really novel ways of solving very difficult technical problems. And with that, we always try to remain positive. We don't ever focus on what we can't do. When there is a problem, we focus on the how. How do you solve it? And with that, so that's what I get paid to do. But what I do in my life and what I try to do in my life is I try to witness and I try to lead others to God. The reason that this all happened was because of bow hunting. And, I look at, so I'm an author. This is not what I get paid to do. I have sunk more money into this project than you can imagine. We always say it was the worst financial decision we have ever made in our lives, but the best thing that we have ever done. So in life, the way that I came to this hobby, if you will, is a friend of ours is a bow hunter. And he asked us if we knew the Lord. And I said, sure, I pray every night. I believe in karma. I don't go to church. I practice church. And he said, why don't you come with us? Just, come to church. And we did. And I'm telling you, I don't know what it was, but I knew at that time in my life, there was a void. And I didn't know then what I know now. I know that void was God. I just didn't know that there was not only a purpose for me in needing to go to church, but I now understand that going to church, you're also there for other people. You're not just going for yourself. And when I started hunting, my husband gave me a bow, and I did not want to hunt. I couldn't understand, why are you getting up at 3:30 in the morning? I love to wear heels. I love to wear makeup, lots of makeup. The deer, they don't like the smell of this. So he got me a bow and I shot it and I felt powerful and I felt great. And I loved it. This was a time in our life where we were battling infertility. So I said, I'd like to focus on doing something that takes my mind off of my problems. And what I've done is, I've always wanted to write a cookbook. And when I sat down to write it, I realized I have nothing to say. I'm just not that interesting, quite frankly. I started to write and thought, what am I doing? And then I thought, I am a carnivore at heart. I now love to hunt. And maybe this is something that I can share with the world, or at least with myself. So in my research, in my world, what I do is I wrote a dissertation in chemistry. It was on the complexing properties of phosphine-containing polyorganosiloxanes and how they disperse quite well with thermally conductive nanoparticles, and making high performance adhesives. So that's what I did there. But everything I do in my life, I like to research. I research, research, research. And there was a time in my life too, when we were trying to have children, that I was really suffering from some major health issues. And probably it was because I ate way too much meat. I mean, my whole life, I grew up eating steak, eating meat. My husband will tell you about a story. We went on our first date, I invited him over for dinner and I made a mistake. And he said, wow, this looks really great. You know, what are we having with it? And I said, oh, I can make you a second one. And I didn't even realize like that was funny. I was a meat eater. So anyway, I digress. Started to go to church and started to meet other Christians. And one of the things that someone had brought to me was this series, and it is Watchman Nee's New Believer series. I had no idea what this was about, but I started to read these little books in the Bible in the tree stand, and it brought me great peace. And one of the books that kind of, I don't want to say it angered me, but I couldn't understand it at the time. It had said that, you know, your time here is not your time. God has put you here. This is God's time. You know, you shouldn't be worried about leaving church, you know, 10 minutes early or whatever. This is God's time. And the other thing was, you know, God wants you to bring your story and bring your testimony to other people. And I call this book, Hunt and Gather, I call this my love letter to God, because as I was writing it, I was healing my digestion issues, healing my issues through whole grains. I'd seen plenty of doctors and they had recommended that I see a nutritionist. And that was kind of like my last straw before they were actually going to do major surgery on me. And I completely revamped my diet. So, you know, God gave us free will. I completely worked this out. And then I started to write my own personal dissertation on whole grains. I thought that I was a celiac, but the blood test result, I'm not. So it wasn't anything having to do with gluten-free grains, but as I started to eat more and more grains, I wrote basically a dissertation on everything I could find about whole grains. So in this book, you'll find literally every grain that there is. So every whole grain that there has gluten, that doesn't have gluten, I write, you know, what it's about, how you can cook with it. So this is, I talk about actually grinding whole grains into flour. So, I mean, we go back to basics. So again, as I'm writing the book, what I really thought would be interesting to do is to take the first two foods from the Bible, so venison and whole grains, and write about that and then explain how I've used those in my life to heal myself. So the book is called Hunt and Gather, but it's not only hunting for venison. It's like we always say, on our hunt for deer, we found God. This is when things really started to change for me. I kept writing the book, praying for others, using these little pamphlets, and these are the leading men to Christ, and going through all these Watchman Nee books. And I think that this one really says it all. It's, you know, a person must have a burden before the Lord, before he can witness to men. So I took my issues with my health and put them in this book. And I believed in them so much that I wanted to share it with others. So years ago, I had paid to self-publish this book. The way that I did it is I bought 1,000 copies, and I thought it would be a great idea to, you know, peddle these books on my own. And part of the reason I did that is because this book is almost every page has full color. It's very expensive to produce. So for a publisher to get this book out, if they were able to do it in, you know, mass volumes, we could get the cost down. They told me initially if I wanted to do this, and if they did distribution, it would be like $70 a book. And I said, you know what, that's not doable. So I bought the books, did it myself, and you know, it went nowhere. But what it did do is, by the end of this book, you know, I wrote this book because I couldn't have children, but because I wrote the book, God solved our infertility. I mean, I believe that. I've lived through this. He's fixed our health. He fixed our issues with infertility. When I got to the end of this book, so writing it, if we go to the frugivore chapter, and I know I'm skipping around, that's how I am. I kind of have technology ADD. But anyway, when we get to the end of the book and I write all about juicing, the powers of wheatgrass, I give you a lot of information in this book on how to heal your body. I don't think it is a coincidence that at the end of the book, that's when we found out we were pregnant. I was really changing everything in my diet. So doing a lot of wheatgrass, a lot of pineapple, which I've really never eaten in my life. I don't love fruit, but when I put it in a frozen smoothie, then I love it. So anyway, the pineapple has an enzyme called bromelain, which is very supportive to the uterus. There's all sorts of medical documentation of these things. And what's amazing is that, we were told that we could never medically have children. That was, there were many, many problems along the way. But one of the things that, you hear people say, let God and let go. And it's like, what does that mean? Well, it got to a point where in the book, I wanted to write about gluten-free macaroons. So at this point, still, we're not going to have children. That dream is dead. So I have saved money to do IVF for a third time. And I went to my pastor and I said, I don't feel right about this. I think at this point, spending the money on a family I don't have is maybe not the way to go. And I said, I think I just need to focus on the family I've got. And so I had never actually tasted a macaron from Paris. These are a little almond flour based cookie. And we did not have Lauderay macaroons here in the States at the time. So I called my mother and my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law, and I said, hey, do you guys want to go to Paris? Let's go taste some cookies. We are not going to museums, not doing any frou-frou, things like that. We're going to take a cooking class. So we went and we took a cooking class, and I kept writing the book, and I teach you how to make macaroons. I go through everything. Andy, I get chills when I think about it, but it was about 3 weeks after I booked that trip that we were pregnant. And that, it's not a coincidence. So I think the more that you open your mind and open your heart to the possibilities that God has for you, these are things that are life-changing. So even though, I said I wrote a cookbook, it's not a cookbook. It's a testimony. It's my story of the burdens that I had gone through and how I used free will to try to heal myself. The other thing you could say is, well, I'm not first of all, if you're a hunter, this is your book. I mean, if you like venison, I've got every cut of meat in here. We teach you how to dress the deer. We teach you how to process it, how to keep it clean and cold. And, there's no gamey flavor with this. It's all in the processing. But what I also wanted to do is make this available for anyone. So you don't have to use venison. And so what I did there, we took a trip to Vienna, and it was there that I saw in restaurants, when you order from a menu in Vienna, you order the cut of the cow. You don't order a steak, you order, what part of the cow you want to eat. So I thought I'll put that in here with the deer, and then break that into each cut of meat. So you've got back straps, tenderloins, London broil, flank, and then I give you a couple recipes for each, which means that you can go to the grocery store, buy London broil, buy a flank, and you can cook with this book. So the book is, whatever you want to do with it, it's my money pit, but I love it. One thing I want to say is a major, major thank you to a friend of mine, Bill Dixon. So Bill had told me that my internet was down, or my website was down, the Hunt for Joy website, and joy being Jesus, others, you. If you put Jesus first, then others before yourself, you'll find joy. So I made a company, or formed a company, Hunt for Joy. It's me. I don't make any money. I don't do anything. I just talk to people. like you. Anyway, I wanted to republish the book because my 1,000 copies were gone. And I reached out to, of all people, Shemaine Nugent. When I first wrote the book 7 years ago, I sent her a copy and she loved it. And they invited me to come out to one of the shows where you could, put things on display. And I said, I have a day job. I just can't do this. But anyway, so I reached out to her and she wrote an endorsement for the new book. So the new one is in hardcover, softcover. It's a huge book. But anyway, so I've got endorsements now from Shemaine, from Bill Dixon, and from Chris McClarney, who is a great friend of mine. He's the Giles County Administrator, 3 great Christians. Anyway, so Bill brought me to Wendy, and then Wendy did the interview, and we have become lifelong friends, immediate. She's just wonderful. But I guess I don't know how I'm doing with time, but one of the things I want to say is I've done a lot of things in my life that I'm either proud of or not proud of. But this book is the one thing that I've got friends who are atheists. I've got a lot of vegan friends. I've got a lot of serious bow hunting friends. It's the one thing in my life that people will look at the book and they'll say, I'm proud of you. And I don't know, it means a lot to be able to have something in my life that even if people don't have similar beliefs, that we've all found a common ground here. And it's a nice thing that I can be able to pass to my kids and show them and say, this is because of you. And then of course I want to thank my husband because let's face it, I would have never, ever hunted without him. So the other thing I'll leave you with too is I am not here to say, hey, everybody needs to pick up a bow. I think it's important that you get out of your comfort zone, because if you try things that you wouldn't necessarily try, you'll discover a whole lot about yourself. But know your comfort level. I mean, everyone has been telling me for years, oh, you got to dive. Let's go diving. And I've tried that. And I'll tell you what, that is not for me. If you want to get eaten by a shark, come diving with me. Because I'll get you killed. The adrenaline that's coming off of me and the fear, that's not something that I'm going to do. But, hunting was a surprise to me. I think it's because I do live such a fast-paced, busy lifestyle in my career. And now with being a mom, there's so little time that the time in the tree stand is just so special to me because I can be quiet, which I don't like to do. I like to talk. So that's, I think that's kind of really the, most of what I want to say. I guess, I know I keep saying I'll end on things, but since I like to talk, I won't stop. One thing that is kind of funny, a colleague of mine, I was having kind of a bad day, and he looked at me and he said, Jen, he said, just be a proton. And I have a PhD in chemistry, so you'd think I would get that. And it took me a few minutes, and my blonde is real, I cover the gray, but anyway, finally rung a bell, and it's like, oh, be positive. Be a proton.
All right. Well, what a wonderful message. Now you see why I've asked her to be on Morning Moments. I just knew she had a great story that she'll share with you. I want to share something that I was thinking when Jennifer was talking about her journey. I've often say on this show, God knows your heart. It's up to us to hear his voice. This is what happens, folks, when a chemist says, God, I need to hear from you. God spoke to her in terms that she would understand. Mm-hmm. And God brought things into light into her world, the venison, the hunting, the grains, and he brought all these things to her in the way she would understand to draw her close to him. Because once you draw close to him, he then will give you the desires of your heart. Mm-hmm. You see, people say God will give you the desires of your heart. The second part of that scripture says, commit your ways to him, and then that will happen. And that's the journey that we're hearing with Jennifer and her wonderful husband. There are some of you that need to hear this message today. Maybe not for the chemistry part of it. And by the way, that article, I haven't read your article yet, but I'm waiting for that movie to come out about that article. Way over my head, and I'm a nurse, let me tell you. But you know, when you hear from people and God speaks to them in that way, you sit back and go, God loves me, and he's going to speak to me if I just allow him to. Now, down below, I'm going to put how you could get the book, how you could find out more about Hunt for Joy. Some of you have connections and want to know more about it, and you have somebody you think, I know somebody that would need that. That's going to be a great gift for them, and you go ahead and get that to them if that the Lord speaks to your heart for a gift. But I'm also wanting you to pray that for this now mother and father, God's blessed them, and that God would continue to bless their family, and that they would continue to be in the center of God's will. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us for Morning Moments.
Thank you so much, Andy. You said it beautifully. I really appreciate your time and the invitation to be able to speak to people. I appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining me for Morning Moments. And if you would, just please keep coming back.